Can the Queen fire the Prime Minister? In normal times, that would be an insane question that we'd never even bother making a video on. But in Brexit world, this is a question that the Queen has allegedly asked her advisors. So in this video, we're going to answer Her Majesty's question and explain just what powers the monarch has in situations like this. Also, just so it doesn't get too dramatic and political, we're not going to discuss if she should or if she wants to, merely what power she has in this situation. Before we do though, let me quickly shout out our merch store. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we recently revamped the store with a bunch of new designs, including the very popular Flying Flamingo design. If you want to pick up any of them, then there's a link in the description. One other thing, Speaker John Bercow is about to leave his post, and considering that he's been the focus of two of our most popular designs, we thought it would be funny to send him one as a leaving gift. It's a really long shot, but if anyone has any connection to Bercow, your mum sometimes goes to wine club with his niece, or maybe Mr. Bercow you're watching yourself. Regardless, if you think you can lend us a hand, email hello@tldrnews.co.uk with the subject line, Bercow leaving party. So let's start with a little context in case you missed the story. A source reportedly told the newspaper that the Queen sought advice on the circumstances in which she could sack a Prime Minister ahead of Tuesday's incendiary Supreme Court ruling. Apparently, the monarch asked her aides for the first time for clarification on just when and how she could dismiss a Prime Minister who refuses to step aside. This was because of deep concerns held by herself and senior aides that Johnson would decide to prorogue Parliament for a second time, even after the Supreme Court's decision that this move was unlawful. The paper goes on to report that Johnson phoned the Queen personally to apologise for the embarrassment caused by the Supreme Court ruling that he had acted unlawfully when he advised the monarch to suspend Parliament. So again, we're not saying that the Queen wants to sack Johnson, or that she even would if she could. Instead, we're simply asking if she can sack Johnson, if the monarch is able to get involved with such serious political matters. Well, this maybe isn't as clear as some might like. As we've said many times on this channel, the UK's constitution is a weird topic. Unlike many other countries who have codified, written down constitutions, which can be read and interpreted, the UK has an uncodified constitution. That means that there's no one document which can be quickly referred to in order to answer this question. Partly because of this, the monarch continues to hold on to some personal discretionary powers. One of those powers just happens to be the right to appoint the Prime Minister, as well as other ministers. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she can just kick the Prime Minister out and decide to appoint a new one, especially as convention dictates that the Queen follows the advice of the Prime Minister. However, the Queen might hold a little more power in this situation than you might think. That's because in 2003, a House of Commons Select Committee determined that the Queen's personal discretionary powers includes the right to act without or even against ministerial advice in a grave constitutional crisis. Now you might feel us getting slowly sucked down into a bit of a legal constitutional wormhole here, and honestly we kind of are. That's because constitutional experts can't agree on exactly what dictates a grave constitutional crisis, and even under those terms, when, if ever, she could remove a sitting Prime Minister. The theory goes that if Johnson decides to prorogue Parliament again, a move that could go against the Supreme Court's ruling, then the Queen could dismiss him for breaking the law. In fact, Dominic Grieve backs up this very point, and as an MP, barrister, member of the Queen's Council, former Attorney General and former Shadow Secretary of State, he probably knows what he's talking about.
The Supreme Court, Her Majesty's judges, telling the Prime Minister that as a matter of law he has to do something.
And he says he's not going to do it.
Well, he'll be out.
He's not going to resign. What happens then?
Well, he'll be out in 5 minutes.
How?
He'll be dismissed.
By the Queen?
Yes.
So the Queen will come in?
But I think it's a rather hypothetical position. If he intends to continue behaving in his completely ludicrous fashion, yes, perhaps. But I think that there will be quite a few things will happen between now and then which will prevent it from happening.
Almost regardless of those spiralling constitutional debates, the Queen likely won't want to get involved. Up until this point, she's been incredibly careful not to use any of her discretional powers, without explicit advice from ministers. She's even gone further than that, trying to ensure that she doesn't look political in any way. However, with Brexit changing so many things, these historical precedents don't necessarily mean all that much. Under the right circumstances, and with the right advice, she might decide to get involved, although it's not likely she'll fire the Prime Minister without good cause. That being said, the Queen will surely see how damaging Brexit has been for those who have been caught in the crossfire, and she'll want to avoid that if at all possible. We'll of course keep you updated on this, as well as everything else related to politics and Brexit, so be sure to subscribe to the channel. You can also hit the bell icon if you want to be notified every time we release a video. And if you want more from us, you can find TLDR across all social networks simply by searching for TLDR News. And if you want your name featured at the end of the videos, just like these people, then you can sign up to back us on Patreon. There's a link to that in the description.